You've tried not to get angry. You've resolved again and again to stay calm, but anger keeps bubbling up. You've tried not to be greedy, but somehow you find yourself falling back into the same trap. You've made every effort to change yourself, to fix what feels broken, but nothing seems to work. You remain the same. And here I am, saying that the key is surprisingly simple: awareness. Now that might seem absurd to you. How can mere awareness, just noticing, be of any help when nothing else has worked? But you see, a key is never a grand or complex thing. A tiny key can unlock even the largest lock. When people came to the Buddha asking him what to do, how to stop being angry, how to stop being greedy, how to free themselves from the grip of lust or the obsession with food, his answer was always the same: awareness. Bring awareness into your life. Ananda, his close disciple, heard this same response countless times. People came with all kinds of problems, and yet the prescription was always identical. He couldn't help but ask, "Master, why do you give the same remedy to everyone? They come with such different ailments: greed, anger, lust, food obsessions, and yet you always say the same thing." The Buddha smiled and said, "The diseases may appear different, just as people dream different dreams. If 2,000 people fall asleep, they will have 2,000 unique dreams. But if you ask me how to end the dream, the answer will always be the same: wake up." The solution does not change. You can call it awareness, witnessing, mindfulness, or meditation. These are just different words pointing to the same thing. The moment you bring awareness into any situation, whether it's anger, greed, or desire, you are stepping out of the dream. You are waking up. And in waking up, the dream loses its grip. It's not about fighting the anger or resisting the greed. That's like wrestling with a shadow. Instead, simply notice it, be fully present with it, and in that moment of awareness, something remarkable happens. The grip of the illusion begins to loosen. The lock clicks open, and suddenly you are free. The Western approach, you see, is to analyze problems, to think them through, to find their origins, to dig into their history. It's about going into the roots, into the past, to unearth the cause, reprogramming the mind, reconditioning the body, removing the imprints left on the brain. That's the game in the West. Take psychoanalysis, for instance. It delves into memory, probes childhood, and explores the corridors of your past. It seeks to trace the problem to its very first moment, perhaps 50 years ago, when you were just a child, tangled in some relationship with your mother. And so the analyst begins to travel backward, 50 years of history, unraveled bit by bit. But here's the rub. It's an endless story. You can trace one problem back to its origins, perhaps even dissolve it. Yet there are not just one or two problems, there are millions. If you were to start resolving every single issue in one lifetime, you'd need 1,000,000 lifetimes just to get through it all. And even if you somehow manage that, each of those lifetimes would generate its own set of problems. It's like endlessly chasing your own shadow, utterly absurd. And this same logic, this same obsession with history, has now extended to the body. Techniques like rolfing or bioenergetics aim to erase the imprints stored in the muscles, to undo the conditioning of the physical form. But again, the underlying assumption remains the same. The past must be dissected. Its roots must be uncovered. Now here's the thing. The human mind is forever caught up in two impossible pursuits. The first is trying to fix the past. And that, my friends, is utterly futile. The past has already happened. It's done, finished, immutable. You can't go back and undo it. The past is absolute. You may revisit its memory, but memory is not the past itself. And then there's the second impossible pursuit, controlling the future. The future by its very nature is uncertain, open, fluid. It hasn't happened yet, and you can't pin it down. Yet humans spend so much of their precious energy trying to secure it, to ensure tomorrow will unfold according to their designs. Caught between these two, regret for the past and anxiety for the future, human beings squander the only thing that is real, the present. Now, the Eastern approach is radically different. First, it begins by saying, no problem is truly serious. The moment you stop taking your problems seriously, 99% of their weight vanishes. The whole way you look at them changes. Second, the East says, Dua, the issue isn't your past or your conditioning, it's your identification with the problem. That's the crux of it. It's not about digging into the history of your anger or your greed or your fear. It's about realizing that you've mistaken yourself for these things. For instance, if you're angry, the Western analyst might say, let's explore the roots of your anger, how it started, where it got reinforced. We'll clean up those imprints. But the Eastern mystic would say, you think you are your anger? That's where you're mistaken. Next time anger arises, just watch it. Don't say, I am angry. Don't even say, I feel angry. Simply observe it, as if it's a cloud passing through your sky. You are the sky. The cloud is not you. This, my friends, is the key. Witnessing, awareness. It's the act of stepping back and seeing things as they are without getting caught up in them. The problems, the conditioning, they're there, sure, but they're not you. And here's the beauty of it. Once you've mastered the art of witnessing, the number of problems you have is irrelevant. Why? Because the same key unlocks every lock. Anger, greed, lust, fear, they all dissolve in the light of awareness. The Western method is analysis. It keeps you circling within the storm, forever entangled. The Eastern method is witnessing. It lifts you out of the storm entirely. Imagine standing on a mountaintop, looking down at the valley below. The storm rages on, but you're no longer in it. From that higher vantage point, you see the storm for what it is. Temporary, transient, just a play of clouds in the vast, unchanging sky. This, my friends, is the power of awareness. It doesn't change your past or your conditioning. They remain as imprints in your body and mind, but it liberates you from identifying with them. You step out of the circle and suddenly the storm loses its grip. And here's the ultimate freedom. Once you know you are the sky, you can choose. If you ever feel like playing with the storm, you can step back into it. If you don't, you can remain above it. The storm is there, sure, but it no longer defines you. You are free. Let's talk about centering. You see, there are two ways to live your life. You can live from the periphery, or you can live from the center. The periphery belongs to the ego, while the center belongs to your essence, your true being. If you live from the periphery, you are constantly in relation to others, constantly reacting to external events. The periphery is relational. It depends on the outside world. When you live from the periphery, nothing you do is truly an action. It is always a reaction. You don't act, you are compelled, pushed, and pulled by circumstances. You are a slave to the external. The situation dictates your behavior, and you respond accordingly. But when you live from the center, everything changes. From the center, you begin to act, and for the first time, you exist in your own right. Not as a relationship, not as a reaction, but as a presence. The Buddha once passed through a village where people were vehemently opposed to his teachings. They hurled insults at him, cursed him, and did their best to provoke him. The Buddha simply listened, quietly and attentively. When they were done, he said, "If you've finished, may I go now? I have to reach the next village. They're waiting for me. But if you have more to say, I can listen on my way back." The villagers were bewildered. They asked, "We've insulted you. Aren't you going to respond?" And the Buddha replied, "I don't react anymore. You can choose to insult me, but I choose whether or not to take offense. Your insults only touch the periphery. They can't reach my center. My center remains untouched, unshaken, and free. I live from the center now. This is the essence of centering, the ability to act, not react. When you live from the periphery, you are constantly disturbed because everything touches you. The periphery is where life happens, and if you are identified with it, you will always be affected by the external. But the moment you live from the center, a distance is created. Insults may touch the periphery, but they cannot touch you. Between you as the witness and you as the outer shell, there is space, and that space is sacred, unbreachable. The Buddha explained it perfectly. 10 years ago, I might have reacted to your insults, but now I act, and to act means to live from the center. Now here's something to remember. When you act from the center, your action is whole. It is complete. But when you react from the periphery, your reaction is always partial, fragmented. It is never whole because your true self isn't involved. For example, if you love from the periphery, your love is never pure. It is always mixed, perhaps with attachment, need, or even resentment. Fragmented love creates contradictions. You may love someone, but part of you also hates them. This inner conflict poisons your relationships, your kindness, your devotion. Only actions from the center are total. And when an action is total, it has a unique beauty. It is self-contained, like a drop of dew. It begins, it ends, and it leaves no residue. It is like a full stop in the sentence of life. You move on, free and unburdened. But actions from the periphery linger. They never truly end. They remain incomplete, a constant weight on your consciousness. They trap you in loops, loops of regret, loops of anticipation. You cannot fully enter the present because the past drags you back and the future pulls you forward. Living from the center means breaking this loop. It means being fully here, fully now. And the key to this is witnessing. Witnessing is simple yet profound. It is the art of seeing without judgment, observing without interference. When you witness, you are not entangled in thoughts, emotions, or actions. You simply are. Let me give you an example. Imagine looking at a flower. If you start thinking about the flower, whether it's beautiful or not, what kind of flower it is, you've already moved into judgment. You're no longer with the flower, you're with your thoughts about the flower. But if you can simply see the flower without labeling it, without letting the mind intrude, you are witnessing. The flower is there, you are here, and there is no interference from the past, no projections into the future. Witnessing is passive awareness. It is not doing, it is being. Thinking, on the other hand, is active, it is doing. It involves judgment, categorization, memory. Witnessing involves none of these. The act of thinking brings the past into the present. When you look at the flower and think, it's beautiful, you're not seeing the flower as it is. You're seeing it through the lens of your past experiences, your conditioning. In doing so, you distort the flower's reality. But witnessing is pure. It doesn't bring the past into the present. It doesn't label, judge, or interpret. It simply observes. The challenge, of course, is breaking the habit of thought. The mind is like a machine, endlessly spinning its web of judgments and interpretations. To witness, you must step out of this machine. One way to do this is to practice awareness in simple activities. Walk without thinking. Eat without labeling. Breathe without analyzing. Let these ordinary actions become moments of pure witnessing. The Buddha often taught his disciples to observe their breath. Just watch it, he said. The breath going in, the breath going out. Do nothing else, just witness. You see, the mind cannot do two things at once. It cannot think and witness simultaneously. To witness is to be present. To think is to be absent. You cannot be both present and absent at the same time. So begin with small steps. Bring witnessing into your daily life. And as you witness, you'll notice something extraordinary. The mind becomes quieter, the periphery fades, and the center emerges. And in that center, there is freedom. There is peace. there is life, not the fragmented life of the periphery, but the total life of being. And that, my friends, is where true living begins.